Life in Ukraine wasn't always about war. It was about growing up, having fun. Darina and her friends loved their party nights. But the fun part of growing up disappeared when Russia invaded. And the kind of growing up that can destroy childhood and adulthood began.
I was raped. It happened out of nowhere because I didn't even talk to the Russian soldiers. Many others talked to them, tried to be friendly, but I stayed at home, didn't really go outside.
And that's where her childhood ended. The term war crime seems too legal and bureaucratic to be associated with such young girls. But the reality of this war is they, and many others, are the victims and survivors of those crimes.
One day I was just walking, and they asked me for the time. I'm a friendly person, I'm a trusting person. I just turned to pull my phone out, look at the time. I turned around and they just pulled me in the car, and that's where it all happened.
Darina is 18. She was 17 when she was raped, and if you want to understand how war does lifelong harm, even if you escape physical injury, listen to how Darina, the girl who loved to dance and sing, now sees her life.
I'm afraid of the men now, especially older boys, but if I have a relationship, strangely I go for guys that are much older, like 12 or 13 years older. I constantly think that guys only want one thing from me. The same thing they wanted. So realistically, no one will ever love me. Not like a real person, not like a girl. They just want it.
Darina was living in Kherson when the Russians arrived and took over a few weeks into the war. The offences committed in occupation are now part of a vast investigation looking at 140,000 war crimes believed to have been committed by Russian soldiers.
Only a few could survive such torture. Just physically, if a man was tortured with a foreign object, they usually died.
Alexei was also living in Kherson. In the early days of the occupation, he would cook food for those who didn't have any. But he was detained by Russian soldiers and beaten, sexually abused and tortured.
It was inhumane. It was like a zoo. You were deprived of everything. The cell door would open and they could do whatever they wanted to you. And you had to do exactly what you were told.
They would beat him, clamp his ears and clamp his genitals, and then electric shock him.
They just beat me for several hours. I was like a football to them. My back, legs, everything was rotten. My cellmate would squeeze toothpaste out and rub it on my wounds.
He saw others die and wished for death himself.
I was looking down the barrel of the gun. I could see just a dark hole, and I had this thought: they are about to turn off the lights. That's it. Great. Everything will end and I can rest. There are thousands of stories like this. Mine is just one tiny story among all of them. In Kherson, there were so many guys that died. No one even knows exactly.
As part of Russia's special military operation, thousands of Ukrainian children were seized from occupied regions and taken to Russia with the intent of eradicating their Ukrainian identities. Initially, those in children's homes like this were taken, then others from families. The lowest Ukrainian estimate is of 20,000 missing children. Russia makes no secret of their actions, publishing videos of children they say they are saving. The International Criminal Court has issued an arrest warrant for this woman, Russia's Children's Commissioner, Maria Belova, as well as President Putin, for the unlawful deportation and forced transfer of Ukrainian children.
These women were in occupied territories and their children were kidnapped and taken to the Russian camps and disappeared. What is this? It is a war crime, a real war crime. It is, for us, it is genocide, because it's a massive indoctrination of Ukrainian children in Russia, in occupied territories. And as we know from our kids, the Russian indoctrinate hugely these kids and prepare them for future war against the West.
Vlad is one of those children.
So they were trying to recruit you into the Russian forces?
Yes, they enlisted us. They wanted us to become Russian soldiers and launch missiles into Ukraine.
Vlad's father was fighting in the army, and he was living with his mother in Kherson when the Russian soldiers came.
The soldiers came to the flat at 9 in the morning. They had a rifle and told me to open the door. They said I had 10 minutes to get my things and go with them. I was at home on my own and didn't have a phone. I didn't even think of leaving my mom a note. We got to the border of Crimea and they gave us this piece of paper, a little one, with the date of entry. But there was not a date of departure. That is when I realized that we may not be coming back home.
Vlad saw hundreds of other Ukrainian children in the camp he was taken to. He says it was an indoctrination camp, and his testimony fits with footage from inside others.
We went to a camp and every morning they played the Russian anthem and raised the Russian flag. They told us that Ukraine didn't exist and that we had to speak in Russian and talk about how beautiful the Russian state is and how good it is there.
Save Ukraine and other charities are trying to repatriate children to return them to their families. Many of their homes are still in Russian-controlled areas, so the charity give them a place to live and counselling to recover. Anastasia was held by the Russians for 7 months.
They beat us and humiliated us there. They didn't let me go back to my family and said that they'll make me a complete orphan, that I would be left without any documents. We had guards in our dormitory and they came to us when we were bathing. It was terrible.
The longer the war goes on, the longer children have been subjected to Russian brainwashing, adding to the challenges of returning to Ukraine.
For many kids, it's very hard. It's very hard because, for example, they have new friends, Russian friends, they have a passport, and you know what these children experience in their schools. From the first day, they're telling, oh, you have Russian ID. If you will come back to Ukraine, they will kill you for this. And children believe. And it's very hard for us to convince that, no way, it doesn't matter for us which passport you have, but you have to know that you're a Ukrainian child.
And how many months have you been here?
Andrei faces a different challenge to his childhood. He's too scared for us to use his real name because his mum is a prisoner and Russian security forces tried to make him and his sister collaborators. One of the many children growing up without parents, either because they're orphaned, their families are serving in the army, or detained by Russia.
Mom was taken from the front of our house and I thought I was seeing her for the last time.
And what have you heard about your mum since she disappeared?
They took her away and then called from her phone. They told my sisters that we needed to collaborate with them. They turned the camera on my mother, who was tied to a pipe, and said, we only had 2 options. You can either cooperate with us or your mother goes to prison.
Andrei and his sister fled their home, fearing they too would be taken away. They were told their mother had been released, but they've never heard from her. A year on, they believe she's still illegally held by the Russians.
So you investigate the whole of Ukraine?
Each of these dreadful stories of individual torment are among the files of those investigating the war crimes committed in Ukraine over the past years.
You have more and more boxes.
Yes,
So many boxes.
The Russian Federation wanted to capture Kiev in 3 days, but our security and defense forces defeated them. After that, they clearly followed orders given by the commander to simply to destroy the civilian population.
There are so many crimes to investigate, a new police department has been created, and the heaps of documents tell of the dreadful number of atrocities committed here.
Hi.
In this room, they investigate the Bucha massacre,
So these are the Bucha files.
committed in the early days of the war. 458 people were murdered in this part of Kyiv, and the images which emerged were some of the worst in this war.
All of these are the details on people in the mass graves, and so are all these boxes as well.
The carefully manicured nails of one of the victims generated worldwide revulsion at the slaughter of civilians.
So I remember this lady and her fingernails.
He tells me they've now identified the name of the commander who gave the order to kill her and other civilians in Bucha. That commander is now back in Russia.
So all the blue dots are a person.
The war crime investigators have identified which Russian soldiers were present when each of the victims were murdered. Some are in Ukrainian custody and will be tried, but many, like the commander, fled back to Russia.
You've got 3 civilians there.
And are beyond justice. The crimes of this war have taken lives and changed lives. That is why, out of respect for the living and the dead, Ukrainians will not accept peace at any price. After all this country has endured, capitulation is not an option. Emma Murphy, ITV News, Kyiv.